What's going on, everyone? Tonight we have the RTX 5080. We're going to be pairing it with the 9800X3D and 32 gigabytes of RAM. We're going to be checking it out again in Borderlands 4 at 4K and 1440p resolution, and we're going to go layer by layer to let you know what you can expect from this card on this title. Everything used to make this video will be linked in the description below. By purchasing through those links, you do help support the channel. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. If you're not new here, thanks for coming back. I appreciate it. All right, everyone, we are back in everyone's favorite poorly optimized game this week. This is Borderlands 4. We're running on an RTX 5080. This is the Gigabyte Gaming OC version, and we have it paired with a 9800X3D. We're going to check it out at 4K resolution, and up until this point it managed to stay right around 60, but we are on the high setting right now. Let's check out medium. This again is with no DLSS because you shouldn't need it, but here we are. Yeah, so at medium settings we're at 50 FPS, and yeah, this is like, it doesn't get any better than this really. We can go to low settings and it will get to 60, but it is like barely. So I'll show you that. I mean, let's just get through this, pain as quickly as we can here at least. All right, so right here we are at 58 FPS. This is the harder area to run at the top of this like hill for whatever reason. I'm not sure why, but it tends to dip up here. And then when we come down here in the more open area, we get a little bit of a swing back up. It still is nothing like spectacular, but we're at 60 FPS-ish at low settings. This is like, I don't get it. I mean, it's a smooth running game. Like the actual frame time graph looks decent. I mean, it's fine. There's no real snags or hangs. I'm not getting any hitches. I don't really see anything that glitches too badly, other than sometimes the environment will just completely disappear whenever you change settings, but then it comes back and then it's fine. So that's kind of the only weird thing that I've noticed. But yeah, for the most part, we're just at 60 FPS at 4K, and that apparently is a low setting. So to move forward, we're going to have to use upscaling. That's just the world we live in. All right, so we're going to go upscaling quality and just kind of go through everything with quality upscaling, because honestly it's just a miserable experience without at least quality turned on at 4K. Again, 5080, no reason for it to struggle whatsoever, completely the game's fault. So I say that with a lot of sarcasm, because it's kind of sad that this game has come out and said that basically the only fix is just turn on a bunch of frame generation. And that's apparently been their answer to how poorly it runs. So that's where we're at. All right, so thankfully, DLSS does make it look just fine. I mean, the art style itself lends it to being upscaled quite a bit. So, at least you have that going for you. But 100 FPS here at low settings with quality. All right, let's go up to medium. Again, this is with quality DLSS. And that gives us an FPS of 82. Now I'm going to call out the PCL is quite nice. It's at 22 milliseconds. So, I do stand on it that it is a smooth running game. Maybe this is what makes it a smooth running title. Maybe they were thinking like, hey, we would rather it run very smooth than have like a really high FPS but have a lot of hitching. So, and on a game like this, if you're not competing, I mean, 60's fine in my opinion. It is a first-person shooter, though. A lot of people might want a little bit better frame rate, but the PCL is an important thing to keep note on. We are at 20 milliseconds, which is really, really good. So I'm going to jump off this thing again, mid-air, change the options. All right, let's go up to high. So we're leaving everything on quality. We're going to kind of see where it breaks down on quality DLSS, and it looks like on high is about where quality DLSS is going to take us, as far as like keeping us above that 60 FPS experience. At 4K now, your PCL went up a little bit, 27 milliseconds. That's still quite good. Anything under 50 in my book is fine, but everybody's tolerance is completely different. So as I go through this, I'll call out the PCL. And I'll kind of say like, oh, this is where I would play. But, if it's not where you would play, then don't worry about what I think. That's why I tell you guys all these numbers as they're flowing across the screen, because everyone's preference is completely different. I have a little bit more tolerance for latency than most folks. So when I think 50 is good, you might like 30 or 40. But anyway, let's just keep going. Enough of me rambling about that. So very high quality, and let's see where this takes us. So on very high quality, sorry, I'm trying to clear my throat and speak at the same time. 56 FPS. So right here, I would probably just jump up to balanced because really there's no sense in going any further, because DLSS is apparently just where they want you to be to get this to stay up high enough to actually play the game and enjoy it. So 67, 65 FPS here, and this is balanced DLSS. So of course, you know, at any point you could frame generate once you get the quality and the FPS that you like and the PCL that you like. The PCL is at 28 milliseconds right now, which is quite good. Yeah, so I'm just going to kind of run around here, give you guys a little bit more environment to explore, but it kind of runs, like, for the most part, just well enough down here, and then not really that great up on the mountain. Dips down up here, as you can see, about 57 FPS. So this gives you a nice swing of what to expect in the game. This has all been kind of like where I've tested this week, because it's, you know, kind of one of the early points in the game, and it gave me an ability to go ahead and start testing earlier than I would have otherwise. But yeah, that's kind of where you can expect about 60 FPS here. Now, very high going down to performance, I think that's okay because you are at 4K resolution and the visuals hold up just fine. However, it doesn't necessarily provide that much more performance. I mean, it only went up like 10 FPS. You know, depends on where you're at again. But, you know, for the most part, going up on your performance, going to performance rather from balance does improve your PCL. You're under 30 milliseconds now. But, you know, there's a lot to be said for responsiveness. So if you're willing to go down to performance, this is where you can kind of expect the game to perform. Now, up in these caves and stuff, of course, we are closing off the view of everything that we have on the screen, so it does go up a little bit. It trends upward whenever you have, like, you know, less of a draw distance typically. That's not for every situation, but that's typically the case. So you're at 76 up here, but let's just head back down here and get back to our normal area that we were in. So in this little area, it kind of goes up to about 80 or so. All right, so let's just jump over and see what, didn't mean to hit the mic, didn't see what Badass does. So actually apply it. Let me see, go back. All right, let's jump in here and see what Badass does at performance. So let's go actually apply that. All right, so there we go. Everything has to vanish. This is the bug I was talking about earlier in the video. See how everything's just like not there, and then it is there, but there is something there. Like you'll just kind of randomly stop because you're hitting something that isn't popped back in yet. It's kind of a weird thing, but once it does it, there's another pretty ugly one. Once it does it and gets everything back in there, it's fine. So, you know, I don't know. If that might bother you, I don't know. There you go. But we're at 65, 63 FPS here at 4K. We're using a lot of DLSS. So let's go to Ultra Performance and see what the best way to play Badass might be as far as performance goes. And again, Ultra Performance is something that I would not typically recommend. It tends to break down a little bit, but this art style does hide a lot of the typical weirdness that comes along with going with so much upscaling, and it does give you a lot more performance. We're at 80 now, and this is kind of that like harder to run area, even up in the 90s, as you can see. So, you know, it's all going to be determined upon what your preference is. So 22 milliseconds of latency, very good. FPS, very good at 88. Very nice flat frame time graph. You can run full Badass settings. Again, you have a little bit of flickering. This little shadow over here where my reticle is, that typically is one of them that pops in and out. I've tested this area enough now to kind of like memorize where it has some trouble. But for the most part, they are things that me personally, I could just get over. It's not like the end of the world if a little sidewalk crack flickers or whatever. It's fine. But, you know, you're playing with a GPU that is, meant to give you far more FPS than this typically, but it's not a VRAM hog, so that's a good thing. Let's jump down and see what the next level of resolution can provide. So I'm going to do that and jump right back in. All right, so everything's back to normal. We are on 1440p now, and we have 110 FPS here at low settings. This is no upscaling. So we're just going to run through it again and see what we can expect at 1440p. Not that a 5080 is a 1440p card by any means. And as you can see, it's at 97% usage right here. So even the mighty 9800X3D is having a little bit of trouble keeping up, but that's okay. We're gonna go up in our fidelity, so it has nothing to fear because the FPS is definitely gonna drop. All right, so now we are looking at 85 FPS on medium. Again, no upscaling. Now I do want to call out, I know I made like a little quirky comment about the 9800X3D. I don't think that it is necessarily the CPU, because I have noticed in this title the GPU is hardly ever being maxed out. Like, and that's not typical. That should be no problem for a 9800X3D to keep up with whatever a 5080 is going to provide. So that could be where some of the performance is coming in. I mean, not that 3% of usage is a lot, but it is, you know, it's your GPU not running at full speed. So I'm not sure if that's just like something in the game itself that is that needs to be patched out or what. Again, you know, this game really has some issues. It's smoother than most titles that have recently come out. You know, I will say it's one of the smoother games I've played, especially as a new release. As far as hitching and all that stuff goes, it's you know, very fluid, but the frames just aren't that high. So anyway, I just want to call that out, because if you see the GPU not at 100% or 99%, typically that's where it would stay. It looks like it's just part of this game. I mean, I've tested it across many different GPUs from AMD and NVIDIA. I've paired it with Intel and AMD CPUs, and it's all the same. So let's go up to high. Enough of me rambling. All right, so this is high native. All right, so that gave our GPU a little bit more usage, again, because we are making it a little bit harder to run. So we're putting a little bit more pressure on that GPU, but it still should not be at 96% here. But that does give us 72 FPS, and then a PCL again of 28 milliseconds. That's pretty good. All right, so let's just jump over to very high. Again, this is still no upscaling, so we're hanging in there. All right, so this is the first time I've noticed it dip below 60. It's around 60, so this is kind of where I would introduce some upscaling. So let's go up to that quality DLSS and try to improve this a little bit. 1440p though, you know, for a 5080, you know, that's a bit overkill typically, you know, but as games get crappier and crappier optimized, you know, I don't think that you should have to go buy a GPU of this caliber to keep up with a 1440p title. But again, that's just the world we live in right now in PC gaming. So let's go up to DLSS and let's go to that quality. So this is very high quality. We've not changed anything else, and that gives us a significant improvement. PCL's at 24 milliseconds, 85 on your FPS, nice flat frame time graph. You know, we might be able to get away with badass settings and keep it above 60. But, you know, the official word is just use frame generation and it'll fix everything. But also that introduces a ton of latency, and that's not really anything but a big old fat Band-Aid in my opinion, because if you aren't running at least 60 or high 50s, frame generation becomes not really used in the best way unless you are on a slower paced game. Like I mentioned it, I think, in my Chronos review. That one, you know, doesn't necessarily require 60 FPS before you frame generate, just because it's a little bit of a slower paced title, whereas this is a much snappier title. Basically, my rule of thumb is if it's better to play with a mouse and keyboard, I want a low PCL and a high FPS. If I can play it with a controller and have a good time, then I don't need anything much more than about 60, you know, give or take. And if you want to use frame generation from that point, that's fine, icing on the cake. But, you know, for the most part, that's kind of my, you know, loose rule of thumb. Kind of takes care of most decisions for me. But yeah, we're looking good. You know, notwithstanding the hardware we're on, I say we're looking good performance-wise. You know, I know that the hardware is complete overkill, and it should be overkill, but in this case, it, you know, keeps you at 74 FPS at 1440p, which is insane. But, you know, we'll just kick on some frame gen and get this running, you know, pretty well at both 1440 and 4K. So if it were me, I would probably just frame gen from here. DLSS quality looks fine. You could go to balanced at 1440 and still maintain a lot of that detail. Gives you about 82 FPS here at the kind of easier to run area, 92 even. PCL's nice, 24, 26 milliseconds. So right here, you could frame generate, but I know someone's wondering, for that one person out there, what's performance look like? Performance at 1440 is a little bit too hard in the paint, in my opinion. And as you can see, it didn't exactly increase your FPS by all that much. So I would rather retain the clarity and just use frame generation since you're already over 60. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, I would just, if I was at 1440, this is kind of how I would run it. I would jump up to quality, because that again gave you, you know, right at 60, a little bit above 60. And then let's see what 2X looks like. 2X is usually a little bit nicer on your PCL than 4X. Yeah, you're at 35 milliseconds, 120 FPS. VRAM allocations right there at 8, utilizing 7.2. So everything looks pretty good. This is probably how I would play it. You could throw 4X frame gen at it if you just really wanted to. I'll show you what that looks like. It tends to negatively impact your PCL though. As you can see, it went up a little bit. 45 is about where it's settled out at. So, you know, I can't really tell the difference between 120 and 235. You know, probably some people can. I can't. So 120 is more than enough for me, and that gives you a nice PCL. So I would probably just say 2X is that sweet spot right here. So quality with that 2X, this is how I would run it right here at 1440. So badass settings. Quality DLSS, 2X frame generation, and that gives you a PCL of about 30, 32 or so, and 144 to 120 dips here and there, depending on where you are on the map. All right, so everything looks pretty covered. Let's go back up to 4K and kind of explore how I would run it at that resolution, and I'm going to flip it over and I'll be right back. All right, so here we are at badass settings, and with quality DLSS, we are looking like 98 FPS. I believe that frame gen is definitely still on. Yeah, it's on 2X. Let's turn that off. Let's get a nice base rate, because I saw that and I was like, that ain't right. All right, so that is 50, 47, a little too low for me. I would probably just go up on the upscaling to performance. You're at 4K, it'll still look fine. That gives you barely 60. But, you know, it's enough to frame generate from, in my opinion. You're close enough to 60 to justify some frame gen, and your PCL's at 29 milliseconds. So once we kick on frame gen 2X, it probably won't be bad. You know, again, you're just going to have to realize that this game is pretty poorly optimized. It's not your hardware's fault. It's not your CPU, your GPU. It's not anything you're doing wrong. There's nothing in the background that's screwing it up. It's just a poorly optimized title for the most part, until they address it officially some way without just telling you turn on frame generation. But ironically, that's what I'm going to recommend doing. You're at 70 FPS down here at the better part. So we saw a swing from about 58 to probably around 77, 80, something like that. So let's just jump over here, turn on some frame gen, keep it on our PCL. It's at 27 right now. So that's going to change once we turn on that frame gen, and that gives us, let it just settle down a little bit. So that brings us up to about 38 milliseconds with that PCL on, which is under my 50 millisecond kind of unofficial personal goal that I shoot for with 100 FPS here. So, you know, can you play it? Absolutely, you can play it. I mean, it's just kind of like I think the main problem is people are surprised at the lengths at which you have to go to get a playable experience. You know, using so much upscaling on a GPU that is by no means cheap is kind of ridiculous. But here we are. We're at you know, 110 FPS. This is kind of the harder to run area up here, as we've established. And we're going to jump off this one more time and wrap up the video. This is kind of how I would play it. I'm just going to go up to 4x for the people, you know, wondering. Just go ahead and answer that question. So it's going to negatively affect your PCL. That's why I probably wouldn't go up this high. It's going to add about 10 more milliseconds of latency, but it gives you 100 or 200 FPS. So there you go. I mean, if you really just want to play it with some crazy FPS, this is what you can do. 4x frame generation with performance DLSS on badass settings will get you there. All right. Thanks for hanging out. I'm going to close out. I have links in the description down below. Anything that I've featured in this video will be linked down there. Of course, those links don't cost you anything extra, but if you do use them, a little bit comes back to me and helps support the channel, as in buying more CPUs, building more PCs, buying more GPUs to test. Yeah, if you use those links down there, it helps me out. So and I will see you in the very next video. Have a good night. Peace.